Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take the sources, articles, and research you've shared with us and distill the most potent knowledge nuggets, giving you the context and the history that really matters.
Today, we are deep diving into one of the most, truly one of the most polarizing figures of 20th century American history, Margaret Sanger.
Sanger, born in 1879, died in 1966, and she's indisputably the founder of the American birth control movement.
And the force that led to the creation of Planned Parenthood. She's celebrated as a first-wave feminist icon, but at the same time, she's reviled for some of the darker, more controversial strategies she embraced to win her fight.
Right. And to really get this, we have to start by understanding the stakes. I mean, you have to picture America in the early 1900s.
It was a completely different world. Our sources confirm that simply mentioning contraception, let alone providing it, was a criminal offense.
A criminal offense.
Yeah, we're talking about the stranglehold of the Comstock Act. This is federal anti-obscenity legislation that basically defined any information about preventing pregnancy as obscene and lewd.
So just talking about it was illegal.
Exactly. Mailing it, distributing it, it meant complete government-mandated ignorance about fertility.
And the thing is, the catalyst for Sanger wasn't some, abstract political idea. It was visceral. It was what she witnessed as a nurse in the slums of New York City.
She was treating these poor, often immigrant women who were just trapped in these endless cycles of pregnancy, miscarriages, and tragically, these incredibly dangerous, often fatal, self-induced abortions.
And the story she always told, the one that really galvanized her, was about her patient, Sadie Sachs.
Right. Sadie had already gone through 2 life-threatening self-abortions. She begged the doctor, begged him to tell her how she could prevent another pregnancy.
And the doctor's response, our sources quote it, is just, it's chilling. He reportedly laughed and told her husband to just sleep on the roof.
That casual dismissal of a woman's life.
A few months later, Sanger gets called back to Sadie's apartment. She had tried another procedure on herself, and she died shortly after Sanger arrived.
And Sanger said that was the moment. She decided right then and there she would never take another nursing case. Her whole life became about ensuring women could control their own fertility. So our mission today is to pull that legacy apart.
The progressive freedom she secured versus the ethically, compromised path she chose to achieve it?
Exactly.
Okay, so let's unpack that first phase. The sheer radicalism of her approach. She wasn't an academic.
No, she was a street fighter. Her strategy was pure confrontation. She knew the only way to challenge the Comstock Act was to violate it deliberately, get arrested, and turn the trials into these huge public battles for free speech.
Her first moves in 1914 were just pure defiance. She launched this monthly newsletter called The Woman Rebel.
The title alone tells you everything, and she used the anarchist slogan, "No gods, no masters." That's a direct challenge to government and religious censorship.
And this newsletter is also historically really important because it's where she popularized the term birth control.
Right. She chose that candid, direct language because she hated the euphemisms they used back then, like family limitation.
Then she wrote this simple 16-page pamphlet, Family Limitation, which just detailed contraceptive methods.
And it was explosive. Completely illegal, but so sought after. It went through 18 editions, translated into a dozen languages. It just showed this massive public demand she was tapping into.
And you can see her commitment. She was arrested, 8 times in her career?
8 times, just for speaking or publishing what they called prohibited information.
The audacity of her protests is what's so memorable. Like that 1929 protest in Boston. City officials threatened to arrest her if she gave her speech.
So what does she do? She shows up anyway. She stands on stage, silently, with a literal gag tied over her mouth.
While someone else reads her statement for her.
And the statement itself was just brilliant political theater. It pointed out that being gagged makes millions of others talk and think the cause in which I live. It was just this undeniable symbol of censorship.
But the danger wasn't just abstract legal risk. There was physical danger, jail time, especially for those closest to her. This really comes to a head with her first clinic.
October 16th, 1916. She and her sister, Ethel Byrne, they opened the first U.S. birth control clinic in Brownsville, Brooklyn.
And it lasted 9 days.
9 days. An undercover policewoman comes in, Sanger gives her a pamphlet, and that's it. She's arrested. The clinic was shut down by police after just 1 month.
And the sacrifice her sister, Ethel Byrne, made is just. It illustrates the cost of this fight.
Absolutely. Byrne was convicted, sentenced to 30 days, and she went on a hunger strike. She
Oh.
became the first woman hunger striker in the U.S. to be force-fed.
Imagine that, force-feeding a political prisoner.
It generated huge emotional media coverage. It created this wave of public sympathy that forced the system's hand. It really pushed the movement from the fringe into the mainstream.
Which leads us to the critical shift, right? She couldn't keep a movement going just on arrests and hunger strikes. She had to professionalize, build an infrastructure.
Yes, and the foundation for that came from a crucial legal loophole in 1918.
The New York Court of Appeals.
Surprisingly, yes, they upheld her conviction, but they carved out this major exception. They ruled that licensed physicians in New York could legally dispense contraceptives, but only to treat or prevent disease.
So a very narrow opening, but it was an opening. It meant the law couldn't just be applied blanketly to doctors.
It was the crack in the dam she needed, and she immediately seized on it. In 1923, she establishes the Clinical Research Bureau, CRB.
And this was the first legal birth control clinic in the U.S. where doctors could actually give contraceptives to patients. And what's really telling about her vision is that the entire staff was female.
All women, doctors, nurses, social workers. And this organizational strategy just builds momentum. In 1921, she'd already founded the American Birth Control League, or ABCL.
By 1939, the advocacy-focused ABCL and the research-focused CRB merge. They form the Birth Control Federation of America.
And then, in 1942, that group gets the name we all recognize today.
The Planned Parenthood Federation of America. But it's interesting, our sources note that Sanger actually hated the name change.
She did. She called it too euphemistic.
Yeah.
She preferred the plain-spoken birth control.
But the movement was gaining massive legal legitimacy. The big win came in 1936 with a case called United States v. One Package of Japanese Pessaries.
That decision was monumental. It effectively permitted physicians to dispense contraceptives nationwide through the mail.
And the practical effect of that was huge. It basically forced the American Medical Association, the AMA, to finally change its stance.
A year later, 1937, the AMA officially adopts contraception as a normal medical service. And just like that, birth control moves from the world of vice into public health.
But her influence wasn't just national.
No, it was global. In 1952, she founded the International Planned Parenthood Federation, the IPPF. It's still the world's largest family planning NGO today.
And her most tangible legacy, arguably, is the pill.
The birth control pill, yes. In the early 1950s, she used her contacts to persuade the philanthropist Catherine McCormick to fully fund the research of a biologist named Gregory Pincus.
And that funding, that direct support, led to the development of Enervid, the first birth control pill.
Pincus himself later said that without Sanger, the pill just wouldn't exist. She was in her 70s at this point, still driving the science.
And the final victory of her life came just before she died. In 1965, the Supreme Court decides Griswold v. Connecticut.
That ruling struck down state laws that prohibited birth control for married couples nationwide. She died in 1966, knowing the core fight of her life had been won.
It's an incredible story of legal and technological triumph, but now we have to shift gears and confront this huge misconception about her primary goal.
Her surprising stance on abortion.
And this is where it gets really interesting, especially for you, the modern listener. You hear Planned Parenthood, you likely think of abortion access, but our sources are unequivocal on this.
Sanger did not champion abortion access. In fact, her whole focus was on promoting contraception as the safe, simple, and moral alternative that would, in her view, eliminate the need for abortion.
You have to remember the context. In her era, abortion was illegal, it was done in back alleys, and it led to thousands of women's deaths every year, just like Sadie Sachs.
For Sanger, abortion wasn't a choice. It was evidence of a failed medical system. It was a desperate act by women who were denied basic information.
So her goal was to end the practice of abortion by providing tools for prevention. The 1916 flyer for her first clinic was so direct it told women, do not kill, do not take life, but prevent.
And she doubled down on this publicly. In 1932, she called abortion for family limitation dangerous and vicious. And this wasn't just rhetoric, it was clinic policy.
Her clinics did not perform abortions during her lifetime.
Not at all. Staff weren't even allowed to refer patients for medically necessary abortions until 1932, and Planned Parenthood itself didn't officially offer abortion services until 1970.
4 years after Sanger's death.
There's a deep historical irony there. The movement she founded, which was rooted in stopping the destruction of life from illegal abortion, evolved over decades into a movement that now vows to keep abortion legal. That tension is a huge piece of her legacy.
Absolutely. But we can't talk about her legacy without diving into the most polarizing subject of all, her entanglement with eugenics.
And it is so crucial to contextualize this. In the 1920s and 30s, eugenics was not a fringe idea.
No, it was a massive mainstream social reform movement. The sources describe it as having scientific respectability. It was supported by powerful people, intellectuals, scientists of the progressive era.
And Sanger embraced it. She needed a political lever. Aligning her cause with eugenics gave it a kind of scientific legitimacy at a time when moral and religious opposition was just enormous.
It was a pragmatic choice, a morally tainted one, but pragmatic.
Her interpretation of the eugenic goal was reducing the reproduction of the unfit. And her definition of unfit was broad. It included people with inherited defects, the insane, syphilitic, and what she called mentally and morally deficient persons.
But there is a vital distinction here, and it's rooted in her feminism.
Right. Unlike mainstream eugenicists who often wanted state-mandated sterilization or insisted that fit women had a duty to have more children, Sanger's focus was almost always on voluntary contraception.
Empowering women, especially poor women, to regulate their own family size.
But that tension leads to a key contradiction. Despite prioritizing voluntary methods, she did publicly endorse the 1927 Supreme Court decision, Buck v. Bell.
Which upheld the constitutionality of involuntary sterilization.
Yes, for those deemed incapable of managing their own fertility. It shows the disturbing political calculus she was willing to make.
And her controversial associations didn't stop there. In 1926, she accepted an invitation to speak to the Women's Auxiliary of the Ku Klux Klan.
She justified it as pure pragmatism. She would promote birth control to any group that would listen. She later called the audience dull, but the fact that she went shows the lengths she would go to.
And when we look at her work in African-American communities, it gets even more complex. On one hand, she opened the Harlem Clinic in 1930 at the request of the New York Urban League.
And critically, that clinic had an all-African-American advisory board and staff, doctors, nurses. It was publicly approved by W.E.B. Du Bois.
Then there was the 1939 Negro Project, which was designed to bring birth control to impoverished African Americans in the rural South. Sanger framed it as constructive aid for a group needing health and economic uplift.
But that project is tied to this single most controversial quote in all of her writing. It's from a private 1939 letter to her colleague, Clarence Gamble.
She wrote, "We do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members."
And that statement, for modern ears, is profoundly chilling. Critics, especially anti-abortion advocates, they seize on this as absolute proof of racist, genocidal intent.
However, the scholarly consensus, the historians who have spent decades analyzing her work, they offer a different interpretation.
They generally refute the charge that racism was her driving force. They interpret the letter as a purely pragmatic, strategic instruction.
Meaning, she was telling him how to prevent the spread of genocide rumors, which were a real fear in communities that were already suspicious of white intervention.
Exactly. Using trusted black ministers was a communication strategy to overcome those rumors so that her stated goal of health and economic uplift could actually be achieved. It's about messaging, not intent.
It's incredibly complex, and the organization she founded has formally addressed this. Since 2015, Planned Parenthood has publicly denounced Sanger's belief in eugenics, calling it an inherently racist and ableist ideology.
And they've removed her name from awards and facilities, stating it's in direct opposition to their current mission.
Looking back, her success is undeniable. Legal contraception, the pill, the world's largest family planning NGO. These are world-changing achievements.
But her life is defined by that profound tension. It's her radical feminist fight for bodily autonomy, a triumph for millions, versus the morally repugnant compromises she felt she had to make with an ideology like eugenics to win.
She died having witnessed the legalization of birth control after fighting for half a century against a government that saw it as a crime.
And considering all that opposition, the censorship, the jail time, the condemnation, it raises an important question for you to mull over. Was her controversial alignment with the scientific respectability of the eugenics movement a lever she used for political gain and necessary evil? Was it a morally tainted tool she felt she had to use to secure that massive, progressive leap toward reproductive freedom for all women? That's the core contradiction of her towering legacy.